He sat on the same bench every day outside the Seattle Public Library, drawing strange symbols into an old notebook. Most people thought he was crazy and passed him by, until one day when a high school student saw an ID card fall from his pocket and froze, because what was written on that card would shock everyone. Welcome to People's Journal Stories. Before we begin this unbelievable tale of a lost genius and second chances, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, help us keep telling them by hitting the subscribe button. The Seattle Public Library, with its iconic glass and steel architecture, was one of the city's landmarks. Every day, hundreds of people went in and out: students, the unemployed, retirees, tourists. Everyone had their own reason for being there. But for the old man who sat on the same bench in the park outside the library every day, his reason remained a mystery. Harold was 71, or at least he looked like it. He was tall, but his posture was slouched. His gray hair was messy. His eyes always stared off into the distance. His clothes weren't filthy, but not exactly clean either. And he always held the same notebook, a worn brown leather cover, yellowing pages. He would endlessly write in it. Most people ignored him. Some even nicknamed him Crazy Harold. No one dared talk to him. He'd occasionally mutter to himself, smile, nod to no one. He looked like any other homeless person. But what Harold was writing was far from ordinary. He was never late, never early. He ate lunch on that bench, usually free water from the library and a piece of bread he brought with him. Sometimes the library staff gave him a sandwich, but if they tried to talk to him, he would just thank them quietly and return his eyes to the notebook. Maria Gonzalez was the head of security at the library. She had worked there for 15 years and had seen every type of person, but Harold piqued her curiosity. "He's strange," she told her co-workers. "He never causes trouble, never bothers anyone, but there's something different about him." "Like what?" asked Janet, one of the librarians. "The way he writes. I've known a lot of homeless folks. Most just mumble nonsense, but him? There's a system to what he's doing." Janet hadn't taken Maria's comments seriously, but out of curiosity she started watching Harold from afar. And it was true. He kept writing, calculating, drawing figures, all with a surprising consistency, always at the same hours, always in the same rhythm. Harold's life was pure routine. He would wake up early, leave his small tent in Washington Park, and walk to the library. At night, he returned. He spoke to no one. Other homeless folks tried to befriend him, but Harold kept his distance. "He doesn't talk," said Charlie, an elderly veteran who lived nearby. "If I say hello, he nods, but he never says a word." But to say Harold was completely silent wasn't quite true. At night, in his tent, he talked to himself. Sometimes it was formulas, sometimes names. No one understood a word, but somehow it all seemed to mean something. 3 years passed like this. Harold became part of the city's daily routine. People on their way to work passed him without a second thought. He was just there, writing, drawing, lost in his world, until that Tuesday morning. But Harold wasn't entirely silent. At night, inside his tent, he would speak, to no one in particular. Sometimes he'd whisper formulas, sometimes names. No one understood what he was saying, but it always felt like it had purpose. 3 years passed like that. Harold became part of the city's rhythm. People no longer flinched when they saw him. He was just there, always scribbling, always silent, always in his own world, until one Tuesday morning. Alex Chen, a senior at Roosevelt High School, was on the fast track to a promising future. He excelled in physics and math and was preparing to apply to MIT. That morning, he arrived at the library early, looking for a quiet place to study. He'd seen the old man on the bench before. Everyone had. People called him crazy. But Alex was curious. He'd always wondered what the man was writing. Today, Harold seemed different. He was more restless, more distracted. He'd set down his notebook, stand up, pace a few steps, then sit back down and start writing again. Alex glanced at him one last time before entering the library. Just then, something slipped from Harold's coat pocket. The wind carried it right to Alex's feet. It was an ID card, old, faded, but still legible. Alex picked it up, and his heart skipped a beat. "Dr. Harold J. Wexley, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Department of Theoretical Physics Faculty. ID, 1972 to 2019. His eyes widened. Was this man really a physics professor from MIT? He walked over cautiously. "Excuse me, sir. I think you dropped this." Harold looked up, and in that instant, his gaze sharpened. A flicker of awareness flashed through his eyes, just for a moment. "Oh, yes. Thank you, young man." His voice was clear, articulate, not at all what Alex expected. "Dr. Wexley?" Alex asked hesitantly. Harold's face changed, as if waking from a long sleep. "Yes, I'm Dr. Wexley. Why do you ask?" Alex handed the card back. "Is this really from MIT?" Harold took it and stared for a while. His eyes began to water. "Yes," he whispered. "I used to work there, a long time ago." "Really?" Alex's eyes lit up. "I'm actually applying to MIT. I want to study physics." For the first time in years, Harold smiled, genuinely. "Physics, it's a beautiful field. Challenging, but beautiful." Alex sat down beside him. "What kind of physics did you study?" "Theoretical, quantum mechanics, particle physics, complex stuff." "What do you write in this notebook all the time?" Harold glanced at it, then at Alex. "Formulas, calculations. I try to write down what's left in my mind before it fades." Alex leaned in, peering at the yellowed pages. It was filled with mathematical equations, physics diagrams, complex calculations. Some he didn't recognize. Others he did. "Wait, isn't this Schrödinger's equation?" Harold's eyes widened in surprise. "Yes. How do you know that?" "We studied it in physics class. Not this detailed, though." Harold flipped to another page. "This one's Einstein's field equations. And this? Heisenberg's uncertainty principle." Alex could hardly believe it. These formulas weren't just college level, they were doctoral. "Professor, were you really at MIT?" Harold nodded slowly. 47 years, from 1972 to 2019. "Then, why are you here now?" Harold gave a bitter smile. "Why am I here? That's a long story." Alex looked at his watch. He was going to be late for school, but he didn't care. "Would you tell me?" Harold was quiet for a long time. Then finally, he began to speak. Harold paused, then spoke. "I married Margaret in 1975. She was a scientist too, a chemist. Our son Michael was born in 1978. We had a perfect life. I was teaching and doing research at MIT. Margaret worked at Harvard. Michael was brilliant. He was going to become a doctor." His voice trembled. In 2010, Margaret was diagnosed with cancer. She fought for 2 years, but she lost the battle. She passed away in 2012. Alex's chest tightened. "I'm so sorry." Michael didn't take it well. He dropped out of medical school, fell into a deep depression. I tried to help him, but I was drowning in my own grief and my work. Harold stopped for a moment, wiped his eyes. In 2015, Michael died in a car accident. A drunk driver hit him. Alex was speechless. After that, everything fell apart. I couldn't teach. I couldn't do research. I was alone in that house, every room filled with memories of them. I started drinking, then gambling. Eventually, I lost my job. In 2019, yes, I was forced into retirement, but honestly, I'd already lost everything. My money, my home. I sold the house to pay off debts. By 2020, I was living on the street. Alex was stunned. He hadn't expected such a heartbreaking story. "How do you survive now?" "Social assistance, charity programs, and this notebook. I write to keep the knowledge from fading away." Maybe you could return to MIT. Harold gave a hollow smile. "Young man, I'm 71 years old. I've been living on the streets for 3 years. Who would ever hire me?" Alex thought for a moment. "But you still know so much. These formulas, these calculations. Knowledge doesn't matter much at this age. What if it does?" That day, Alex never made it to school. He stayed and listened. Harold told him all about quantum physics, and Alex soaked up every word. Harold's knowledge hadn't faded at all. He was still a professor, just lost in the noise of a world that had forgotten him. That evening, Alex went home and talked to his mom, Jennifer. She was a journalist, an editor at the local newspaper. "Mom, something really strange happened today," he began. He told her everything. At first, Jennifer didn't believe him, but seeing the seriousness in her son's eyes, her curiosity was piqued. "Can you find this man again? He sits on the same bench every day. Then let's go together, tomorrow." The next morning, Jennifer joined Alex at the library. Harold was there, just like always. "Dr. Wexley?" Alex approached him. "This is my mom, Jennifer. She's a journalist." Harold shifted uncomfortably. "A journalist?" Jennifer stepped forward, calm and kind. "Dr. Wexley, my son told me your story. If it's okay with you, I'd love to speak with you." "Why?" "Because your story is something people need to hear." Harold hesitated. "No one will care." "You think that, but you're wrong." Jennifer sat and talked with him for an hour. She took notes, photographed his MIT ID card, and glimpsed his notebook filled with complex equations. That night, she did her research. She found Dr. Harold Wexley on MIT's website. He had truly worked there for 47 years. He had dozens of published papers. He was well known in the field of physics. But after 2019, nothing. It was like he'd vanished from the world. Jennifer spoke with her editor. The story was approved. But first, she needed Harold's permission. The next day, she returned to the bench. "Dr. Wexley, I want to write your story, but only if you agree." "Why would you want to do that?" "Because people need to understand. Even those living on the streets have a past, dreams, achievements." Harold sighed. "No one will read it." "They will, I promise you. And if you write it, what then?" "Maybe nothing. Maybe everything." Harold was silent for a long time. Finally he said, "Okay, you can write it." Jennifer's article was published in the Seattle Times under the headline, "The MIT Professor Who Lives on the Streets, The Fall and Rediscovery of Dr. Harold Wexley." The response was overwhelming. Local TV stations reached out for interviews. Former MIT colleagues tried to get in touch, but the most important call came from the University of Washington. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, chair of the physics department, was one of Harold's former students. "Professor Wexley, I'm so glad we found you. Where are you? Can we talk?" Harold was stunned. "Sarah? Is that really you?" "Yes, sir. I took your quantum mechanics class in 1995. "I remember. You were one of my brightest." "Professor, please come to the university. We'd love to see you." Harold hesitated. "Sarah, I'm not the same person. I live on the streets. I have nothing." "You're still you, sir. You've just been through a hard time." "But, no but, I'm coming to pick you up tomorrow." The next day, Sarah brought Harold to the University of Washington. They toured the campus. Old memories flooded back, and so did a glimmer of hope. "Professor, we have a proposal for you," Sarah said. "We'd like to bring you on as a guest lecturer. Just 2 classes a week, quantum physics. You'll be paid, of course." Harold couldn't believe what he was hearing. "You're serious?" "Completely. And we'll arrange housing too. You can live in university faculty housing." Tears welled in Harold's eyes. After 3 years, he felt hope again. "Thank you, Sarah, truly." 2 weeks later, Harold stood in front of a lecture hall, clean-shaven, wearing a fresh shirt, still nervous but standing tall. "Hello," he said to the room of 30 students. "My name is Dr. Harold Wexley, and I'm here to teach you quantum mechanics." The first lecture was a triumph. Harold's passion and clarity captivated everyone in the room. After class, a student approached him. "Professor, you used to work at MIT, right?" "Yes, for 47 years. "Why'd you come to UW?" Harold smiled gently. "It's a long story, but let's just say, sometimes life takes us down unexpected roads." Months passed. Harold's lectures became some of the most popular on campus. Students loved his stories, his examples, and his unique way of connecting physics to real life. But something deeper had changed within Harold. He now lived in a small campus apartment. He had a steady income, but most importantly, he had begun to value himself again. He stayed in touch with Alex, too. The young man had been accepted to MIT. Harold mentored him, offering advice and encouragement. "Professor," Alex said one day, "when I first met you, I never imagined you'd become this." Harold chuckled. "Neither did I, but as long as we're alive, anything can change." Do you regret everything you went through? Harold paused. I'm heartbroken about losing Margaret and Michael. But the things I've been through made me stronger, more compassionate. The connection I now have with my students, it's deeper than it ever was before. What do you mean? Before I only taught physics. Now I teach life. How to rise after falling, how to hold on to hope. A year later, Harold wrote a book, Quantum of Hope, A Professor's Journey from the Streets Back to Science. The book became a bestseller. With the proceeds, Harold created a scholarship in memory of Margaret and Michael, supporting underprivileged students in the field of physics. Harold's story spread nationwide. He appeared on talk shows, gave public lectures, and attended conferences. But what he loved most was still teaching. My students keep me alive, he told Sarah. Their questions, their curiosity, it gives me purpose. 3 years later, Harold prepared for retirement once again, this time on his own terms. He was 75. The lecture hall was packed for his farewell ceremony. Students, colleagues, journalists, everyone had come to honor the man who had fallen and risen again. Alex was there too. Now Dr. Alex Chen, a researcher at MIT. Professor, he said, do you remember the first question I asked you? What question? I asked, hey, what are you writing in that notebook? Harold smiled. I remember. I said I was writing down the fragments left in my mind. And now? Harold thought for a moment. Now, I'd say this. I was writing down the fragments, but what truly mattered was sharing them with others. He gave his farewell speech. Dear students, colleagues, friends, 3 years ago I was a man forgotten by the world. Today I stand before you filled with gratitude. Applause filled the room. Life will test you. I was tested and I lost everything, but I've learned that the most important thing not to lose is hope. Tears welled in his eyes, but this time they were tears of joy. These last 3 years have been the happiest of my life, not because I was teaching physics, but because I learned how to live. And one last piece of advice. Don't dismiss the old, the strange, or the quiet. You never know. They might be the ones who have the most to teach you. Harold was given a standing ovation. After the ceremony, Alex spoke to him. What now, Professor? I'll keep writing, and maybe help other Harolds out there. Other Harolds? Yes, people living on the streets, but with valuable minds and broken stories. They deserve second chances too. Harold meant it. In retirement, he launched a support program for the homeless. He called it Second Chance Scholars. The program identified educated individuals living on the streets and offered them housing, employment assistance, and dignity. In its first year, they helped 15 people, former teachers, engineers, even doctors, each with stories as tragic and as powerful as Harold's. When people fall, Harold said, they need a hand, not a label. I was lucky. Alex and Jennifer found me, but there are countless others still waiting. Today, Harold is 78. He lives in a small home in Seattle, surrounded by books and memories. Sometimes he stares at the wall, at the framed photos of Margaret and Michael, but he no longer cries. He smiles, because he's living a life they would be proud of. And yes, he still writes. But now his notebooks are filled not with formulas, but with stories. Stories of the people he's met, the lessons he's learned, and the hope he continues to share. Alex visited recently. Now, a respected researcher, he asked, Professor, what if I hadn't seen you that day? Harold smiled. Maybe I'd still be sitting on that bench, but you saw me. You asked questions, and that was enough. Do you think it was a coincidence? Maybe, but I believe everything in the universe has purpose. Even in quantum physics, every particle matters. He looked out the window at the Seattle skyline. This city gave me a second chance. People gave me a second chance. Now, it's my turn to give it to someone else. Have you ever met someone like Harold? Someone who seemed invisible, but might have had a story worth hearing? Tell us in the comments. Because here at People's Journal Stories, we believe every soul carries a story, and sometimes the most extraordinary people are hiding in the most ordinary places. If this story touched you, please like, share, and subscribe. Help us keep these voices alive, and remember, Hope is never truly lost. Sometimes it just needs someone to ask the right question.